Phoenicia.
I'm Dorian.
And with us today, we have the lovely, beautiful Mrs. Valeria Hunter.
Valeria Hunter.
You all are funny.
Let me just say, first of all, it took her a while to get down here from the ERA event because she had to get, put your face on?
Yes,
You
I had to
already
do
look
that.
great.
Well, that's just nice of you to say. But not only that, so that is what I thought I had to do. What in actuality I had to do is why being a member of the club is so wonderful, right? People that I know but not necessarily that well stopped to chat because I haven't seen them in a while, whether it was a week or 2 weeks, and then there's a written interview that I've done recently, and someone had just seen that, and so they wanted to talk about it. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this is just amazing. But I know I was keeping you guys waiting.
Yeah.
And
That's
You
okay.
know,
What was the written
Good
interview
things
on?
come to those who wait.
yes. The written interview is on LinkedIn, and I was tagged, but I don't look at LinkedIn very much anymore, so that's why I didn't see it. And someone told me Monday that it was also there. They asked a couple of questions of members. I know I'm not the first person, but I think I was maybe second or third, and just questions about
The
why
member
we.
spotlight?
Yes, that was what
me. I
You
put that
know.
on there.
you did.
Yes.
Well, see, I didn't
So-
even know.
That's why we're doing this interview. So people will hear
Lon
right.
sent you the interview questions.
Who did?
Lon. who's
Yes,
in member
yes,
events.
yes, yes.
No, membership.
About a
membership.
month ago.
Yes. Yep. So we're just routinely every week posting things like that on LinkedIn, so people know who
Okay.
you are and what you do and
Well,
the
see.
background and.
And so that has worked
Yeah.
because people
See?
now
That's
do
good to
know who I
know.
am.
Yeah.
And Monday was the first day that I was in the cafe, in Cafe One, and someone pulled me aside. Now it was someone who has I've been going to book club with, and so they knew a little bit about me because we discussed some of our background and just why some of the books we read resonate with us. And so this person knew that. And when they saw the profile, then they said, oh, it reminded them that they remembered the book. They remembered our discussion, our whole group's discussion of the book. And then in particular, some of the things that I said about the book. It actually happened to be a book that I led the.
See, it's a conversation starter. So that,
Yes,
I mean, that was
absolutely.
an absolute whole point of the member spotlight is so that you know a little bit more about each member, and you can like, oh, I also went to that school, or I also,
And that's
I'm
what
an
happened.
engineer, So.
And that's what happened. So with the first person on Monday, they said they were an engineer, and that I didn't know. And so that meant the book conversation richer. We could even start talking about it again. And then today, the other reason, and the real reason I'm late getting down here was because the person who had seen the spotlight, and I don't know when they saw it, but today was the first time they'd seen me since it had been published, and mentioned that their daughter had gone to Spelman, where I also went to undergrad, and just graduated in June,
Oh,
since
okay.
school just, since we're in the second semester now, or the beginning of the second semester. So not just even a year ago, and is going to law school now.
Excellent.
And I thought that was exciting. I need to know your daughter, and I need to know what she's doing and what she wants to do afterwards and all those things.
So
So
that's
that'll be
good.
exciting.
And-
And I'll probably see her at alumni. At
Yes.
least I hope I will
Yes.
see her at alumni meetings.
Hopefully. So talking about it, because, Phoenicia and I both know you. You've been a member here at the club for how long now?
It's not been a year and a half.
It's been
It has
a
been
year.
longer than
Yeah.
a year.
And I know that because I remember you coming in.
Oh, you do?
I do remember you coming in. And because I haven't been here, I think I've been here like 3 years too, going on
Okay.
3 years too. And I remember you coming in, and you were always, I said, our conversation was great in the beginning, but just kind of understanding what Valeria does and what she did. And I think you alluded to it. You were an engineer, and you are now a retired engineer.
Yes.
Tell everybody that's probably looking for the first time what type of engineer, because I think, was it a chemical?
I was trained as a chemical engineer, and I worked in the energy industry, 2 different types of energy for I'm going to say 30 or between 30 and 40 years that I was working. After.
And that's
I
a
know.
that's a
Yeah.
long time.
It is a long time. And so for everybody who says to me, therefore, why are you retired? Because I worked 30 to 40 years and that was enough.
That was enough. So, but you're not originally from Chicago.
I am not. I'm from Detroit, Michigan originally.
Detroit.
Yep, the D, as we say.
The
as
D.
As they
As
say
they
now.
say.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because they did not say that when I lived there or moved there. We
Yeah.
were just Detroit. And I moved out.
D.
I moved away. Right. That's new.
Yeah.
But it's okay. I actually like it. I was in Las Vegas and there was a restaurant actually called the D. And it had things, food that were Detroit sort of.
Oh.
And so I thought, okay, the D, I get it now. Yeah, so when I left there, though, after high school, I actually never moved back. I went back to visit my parents. I have a brother that lives there, but it was always a visit, so probably not longer than a week. The one time I was there longer than a week, I spent the summer, I think it was in 1989 or 90 there, working for Chrysler. I worked for Chrysler
But
in the summer.
Why didn't you go back?
I didn't get a job to go there when I first graduated. And that's an interest. I don't think the story is that interesting, but it would be interesting from my father's perspective. He worked at Chrysler, so as his career, so our entire life. So Chrysler paid for college. Chrysler paid for everything. And I had a offer to attend the General Motors Institute. So that was upon graduation. So General Motors Institute at the time was a program where you would go work at General Motors for 6 months, and then you would go to school at GMI for 6 months. And you would get a regular bachelor's degree, but you would be pretty much tied in to working in the auto industry, if not also at General Motors. And I just didn't think at the time that that was what I wanted to do. And pretty much Detroit is an interesting city, at least then, in that many of the people who worked there were in the auto industry. And so was that something that I wanted to do? And I didn't think it was something I wanted to do. And the other thing that happened at the time was I had to ride the city bus to high school, which was we had one magnet school at the time in Detroit. There's two now, but there was just one, and it was in the city downtown. And we lived in the city, but near the edge of the city. So the bus ride was 45 minutes, almost an hour sometimes. It's a long way. But on the way, we would pass this major street, and there were car dealerships along the street. And I would see there was a sign up for the car dealership that was a Honda dealership. Now I'm in high school. Everybody in Detroit works for, or most people work for the auto industry, and therefore American cars, and it's very important in Detroit culture. And but I would see that Honda dealer, and I'd see that sign that said you could buy a Honda CVCC for $1996, and I just thought, that's $1,996. That's not an impossible amount of money to pull together. I can save that much. And so every day when that bus would drive past there, I'm thinking, how can I scrape together $1,996 to buy a Honda? Well, okay, again, Detroit culture, you don't buy Hondas.
I heard that.
Right. American cars.
American
It's a
cars
sin.
only. But I kept saying, Dad, 1996. What can we do about 1996? And he wasn't hearing it. So he was very unhappy that, number one, I turned down going to General Motors Institute, because I also don't think if you paid tuition, it was a very low amount, and you were going to make money in the co-op as well. So it would have been a very financially less stressful way to go to school and to get a bachelor's degree. But I wasn't interested. And then I also said, I'm going to buy a Honda as
Man,
my first
breaking
car.
his heart.
I was in every way possible. That's exactly what I did. And I ended up doing both, not going to General Motors Institute and buying a Honda.
Wow,
And
it's
leaving-
like
and leaving
not-
Detroit.
Yeah.
And leaving Detroit.
Wow.
Let me just say, it did not cost $1,996. I did not understand at the time
Yep.
that it was not,
Yep.
that the advertised price was not the real price you pay for a car. But I was relentless when I did negotiate the price of the first vehicle that I bought. And then I owned Hondas for Oh, why?
You love the Honda.
Driving a
Yeah.
Honda around Detroit.
Yeah. Do you still drive a
Oh,
Honda?
listen. Okay, see, we are on a podcast.
Yeah, well, that's what I want to know. So you talking about Hondas like is Honda still your car of choice?
It is not.
They're good
I
cars.
wait. I think they're really cute, and I actually would buy another one. I don't own one now, but I will say. But back to what you said about driving. So when I went back, I started this conversation to say I went back to work at Chrysler. That was the one summer that I worked. That was back in Detroit for the longest period of time, and I owned my second Honda by that time. So I had to drive that car to work. How else was I going to get there?
That's hilarious.
Here she comes with that Honda.
Right, here she comes.
They had a line in the parking lot, and if you had any American car,
Really?
you had to park behind the line and walk further to get in the office.
Boy, Detroit is something else. You
I'm
wouldn't have known
I
that.
am not mad at them for that. At
Yeah.
the time, there weren't. For example, the BMW dealership that's in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say what even the definition is of an American-made car. Now, I'm not quite sure.
Right, that's
But
right.
at the time, the Hondas were made in Japan and shipped over, and those were dollars out of my parents' pocket,
Right.
out of my friends' parents' pockets, and it was a sea change, though, in the way people bought cars in the United States. And I don't know that I had any insight at 17 or 18 that I knew that. I just knew that my dad got a new car every couple of years, and they said that isn't what happened. Now, did he get it because he wanted a new car, because he got good discounts on cars? Maybe. But, I kept that first Honda, well, not long enough. And the second one until it had almost 200,000 miles on it.
That's amazing. This is a great story. I'm interested in the fact that, because Detroit, I have a lot of relatives and family. I actually
okay.
lived in Detroit for a minute. That's another story. It'll take a long time.
Okay.
This is 1998. But your desire, when did you know you wanted to become an engineer? Did you grow up saying, especially a chemical engineer at that, and explain to that? Seems like there's a little bit more involved in chemicals, and it could be a little dangerous.
And what I did, especially in the nuclear field, probably was dangerous, and I didn't necessarily know about that. But I decided that I wanted to be an engineer when I was in high school.
Oh.
So probably along 15 or so.
It's amazing.
Yes. And I tell many people that I selected engineering because I was told, and it was true for me, that it would be lucrative, that I would be able to have a good living from that. And I enjoyed math. I was good in math and the sciences, but probably more in math until I took my first calculus class.
Right. I was like, wait.
Yeah, that was hard. And it made me question my decisions. And chemistry was fun. Cooking is chemistry. And that's what some of the people, that was the book that I actually led the book discussion on, was lessons in
It
chemistry.
makes it sound less intimidating when you put it like that.
Well, and that's what I tell girls. Chemistry is, if they're baking, that's a chemistry experiment, especially baking soda is sodium bicarbonate,
Right.
And salt is sodium chloride. Vinegars are acids, and so our lemon is lemon juice, so lemons. And so if you're so you really are doing chemistry when you're cooking. And if you're baking, you have to do it well, or you will really not have a good outcome. And then the other thing I do and started doing when I was 5 or 6 was I sew, and I started quilting. And quilting, those are geometry, and not experiments, but those are that you need to know geometry to be able to put patchwork together. And well, frankly, our ancestors have been doing that for ever. And reusing materials. So now you're talking about waste management. So engineering isn't something that we've never done. Working in it in the way that I did is just a step up from.
And I'm sure, what was it like as an African American woman in a field such as a chemical engineer? How many of How many of you were there?
So you didn't. Now this is not a test. This is not a question that you knew to ask me.
Uh-huh.
But the first job I took out in Washington State with, I took the job with Rockwell. They were the contractor for the Department of Energy that operated the site where I was working, and I didn't know it at the time. But I was the first African American woman chemical engineer that they had ever hired.
See what I'm saying?
Now, I didn't know that at the time. And the way I found out was there was so the building was 2 levels. I worked on the first level with all the basic process engineers. Process engineers do day-to-day engineering. So if there's a problem on the site, if maintenance or operations can fix it, they just fix it. And we hope they let us know, because if they record it in some way, because if same thing continues to happen, then there's a problem that engineering should probably solve. Sometimes they don't think about it and they just do that. Process engineers are that first line of engineering. If there is a process problem, then, and we can fix it in a short period of time, then that's where process engineers. So most beginning engineers will start in a job like that. And then there are the longer term engineers who are improving processes over the long term, or changing them completely because of a change out that you need to do something differently. And they are usually the more experienced engineers. And in this particular office, they worked on the second floor. That was the big deal. As
Huge.
it was and this is where all also the managers and researchers and they worked there. Well, I like to go up there just to sort of see the quiet and staid that was going on up there. And I happened to be up there. So the way I would get up there would be to send my print jobs to the printer that was on the second floor, because the one on the first floor was too busy. And I was up there pulling my print job one day, and the print job that was in front of it that I saw was one that was a presentation being put together by some of the managers up there, talking about their hiring and staff, and they said that they had hired their first Black female
that's how you
chemical
found
engineer.
out?
Well, I didn't know it
Just
was
kinda-
me. So I took the presentation to the admin on the floor. She was an African American woman. And I said, I picked up my print job, and this one was in front of mine, so I just wanted to bring it. It probably came from here. And she was like, oh, okay, thank you. And I said, well, and I looked around, there weren't any other people, so I just thought, I said, I did look at it, and it says we just hired the first, and I would like to meet her.
How hilarious is that?
She looked at me
Right.
like
Real life.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what she said. Just looked at me and she said, it's you. And I was like, you know who I am? And she says, of course, everyone here knows who you are. You are that person.
That's special.
Yeah, all I could think of.
Special.
So I was, I don't know about special.
No,
but,
I think so.
Well,
Because
thank you.
just I mean,
What I thought of at the time
Yeah,
was
at the
I should
time.
have asked for more money.
see what I mean? We ain't even got to that part yet, but
That's what,
Yeah,
but who
interesting
knows?
story.
You don't know. They don't tell you. I will say, in retrospect, I didn't accept the job at first. It was far away and
How
really
far?
the middle of
Where?
Washington State and in the center. So not Seattle, not Spokane, but right in the middle. And it was working at the site where they produce plutonium for weapons.
Wow.
The weapons that had been used in the Manhattan Project that ended
wow.
World War II.
Big time.
By the time I went to work there, though, we were mostly in waste management. How do we safely secure and immobilize all the waste materials that have been collected now over the 40 years that this site has been in operation? And the original way was in large tanks from 500,000 to 1 million gallons that were interim storage. And interim storage at the time meant 25 years. And here I didn't start working there until almost 30 to 40 years into the program. So this was an emergency. It was something, and I say emergency, I don't want to use that provocatively, but it meant it needed to be addressed.
Yeah, and soon.
And so that was the work that I was doing. Process engineering for those tanks that were holding the material that was waste after the
And you talk about this, and I know you said that you loved in high school. You loved, chemistry. I mean, we loved math.
I love math.
You got to be able to love because
We can't relate.
I swear to you. I mean, I remember going to college and I needed a tutor to get me through math, and because of my high school didn't prepare me, I don't think the right way here in Chicago. But in those situations, and just how important math is today, and of course those things that we need. And you being a chemical engineer, what did your father think of that? When you decided and you told him, "Hey, Dad, this is what I want to do," was he supportive?
But he's already upset over
Yeah,
the Honda.
the Honda-
He's already upset with not taking the drive at General
Now
Motors.
she's becoming a chemical engineer.
He was just happy I had a job, and
Oh.
same as my mother at the time. And
Okay.
and if it was an issue that I was now moving, so I had moved from Detroit to Atlanta to go to Spelman, and I graduated from Georgia Tech there, right? So
Georgia Tech, Spelman.
same time. So it was a dual degree program where you had to complete the requirements at the same time, and in 5 years. At least that's what that was the promise. So my parents that's what we're paying for. So it took me like one extra semester. Yeah, exactly. One extra quarter, and they were pretty much like, "This is it." So I had to whatever job was available. So the fact that I had that job, I had that as an offer, and then I also had an offer at Lawrence Livermore National Lab. So Lawrence Livermore is a lab that I didn't know at the time, but also did work. So the U.S. National Labs system in the country primarily did work for the Department of Energy, at least at the time. I don't know what all of them do now. There's a national lab here at Argonne. It's actually not far from where I live, and they also did research and still do. They actually were the ones, now I'm going to get this wrong, that created the first sustainable reaction at the University of Chicago, and then realized this is not necessarily the best place to be doing this, so moved out to the Forest Preserve area, still in Cook County, but in that Palos area where I talk about hiking all the time, and then eventually Argonne National Lab. So all these national labs that are around the country had parts, and they still do some of that work, still are figuring out how to do permanent storage, right? But also some of them are doing work for others, and a lot more waste management and other kinds of work. Again, I am retired now, so I don't know exactly what most of these places are doing.
Do you miss your work?
I do not miss, let me say that differently. I don't miss working. I do miss not keeping up so much with what's going on in the field. But it's technical and details, and at the time I had to have a secret security clearance, so I'm still sometimes uncomfortable with how much that I know I'm supposed to talk about. When I first started working, I wasn't supposed to talk about anything. At least that's the feeling that I got. Eventually, after I got my MBA, I went back to work at the National Lab there, and therefore I had to publish, and that meant anything I published would be anyone would be able to read it, and it was subject to Freedom of Information Act submissions. You guys understand that? Yes. And so while I wrote what I did, we had editors who knew how to make sure that it was okay for it to be in the public in case someone should do a FOIA or for whatever reason. We were also encouraged to submit to different conferences and do some discussions. It was just more difficult because of having to have your presentations cleared and things like that.
Okay,
So I do miss keeping up with what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, since now you're retired, and now we get to see you at the club.
Yes.
In your retirement life.
Yeah.
How's that been? I see you at a lot of events.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes. Not too much.
Some of the things I already know what you do. I know that you love plays, you love opera,
Yes.
you love.
As a matter of fact, I'm going tonight to the Steppenwolf to see.
Are you going to Steppenwolf?
Yeah, to see Felicia Rashad's.
Oh, yes.
I think it ends this
I've been
weekend.
seeing a lot about that.
I've heard a lot about
Yes.
that. Wow, tonight's the
Well,
last night. Okay.
No, I don't know if tonight's the last night, but I do think it ends this weekend. And my understanding is she took a sabbatical from Howard in order to come here to do that.
It's amazing.
Oh, I knew that's why she had left. I knew she
Yes,
wasn't there.
to
Okay.
do this play.
Nice. So
So
do
we
you-
should see it.
We should go see it together. We should go now. I mean, that would be great to go see that.
7:30 tonight.
All right, we're on our way.
And I don't know if that, because the holiday weekend, I don't know if there's like matinees on Saturday and or Sunday, and I haven't heard that it's being extended. So I'm kind of disappointed because it's not a long run. I'm only not disappointed if we hear it goes to Broadway.
Yeah, if it
Then
goes to Broadway.
right,
you'll
if
see
it goes to
again.
Broadway, then
Yeah.
we'll be excited.
Yep.
Then we'll have to all go to New York and stay at one of the. I'll have to
We
stay
could
at
do
one-
that.
And I have to stay at one of the clubs.
I would love to do that.
What you call it, club?
One of the reciprocal clubs.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's right.
This would
I
be hot, yeah.
understand. There's
We
a
already got the
couple in the
plans.
area.
Yeah. So you love the club.
I do.
know you do because
Yes.
you come here and you're involved. What is it about the ULCC, the Valeria, is just like that you would mind even telling your friends, hey, this club over here?
So I didn't know anything about the ULCC or even club life in general before I came here. I have learned a lot since then, and I guess that makes sense, right? I'm a researcher, and so I look into things. I've stayed at the Detroit Athletic. I always get that wrong too. I don't know if it's Detroit Athletic Club. For some reason, I call it Detroit Athletic Center all the time,
It's
but I don't
club.
think that's right. It's club. Okay, and it is lovely. It's right next to the new, to me, ballparks. They even have rooftops that you can watch the ball games, or you can even walk through to the from the gym, and there's a window where you can just see the game. It's
nice.
It is very nice. They don't have as many rooms as we have, and I think that makes our club very different because I've also been to the club in Paris, so the St. James Club. They also have accommodations, but as they explained, also not as many as we do. So it's harder to get reservations and stay in those places when you go to them. You just have to do way more advanced planning than I've had to do when I've stayed overnight here. So when I've stayed overnight here, and so I'll say that's one of the things I have loved about coming here because I live in the suburbs. I didn't even really get to know Chicago that well. And while I was working, another reason I am happy not to be working, I worked in Naperville and in Warrenville and then in Lisle for a hot minute.
Far.
Yes, and long hours, right? So if I didn't end work and leave until after 5 o'clock, usually between 5 and 6, then coming downtown for an event like going to the theater,
Less
or
likely.
it didn't happen. The traffic
Makes
was
sense now.
horrible.
Yeah.
Parking was hard for me to figure out as a suburbanite. All of those things made it difficult to do. So I am making up for the time that I just didn't feel like I had the opportunity to do those things. And then I told you, before I moved here, I lived in a little town in the middle of the state of Washington. So if I wanted to go do cultural things like that, that meant a drive to Seattle, which was 2.5 hours, 3 hours away, or to Portland, which is again 2.5 to 3 hours away. And it just didn't happen very often. So I'm making up for that I wasn't able to do all of that back when I was living there. When I was in college in Atlanta, I didn't have the money.
Right.
Right?
You got the money, now you don't have the time. Right. That's how
There
it
you
goes.
go. Right.
So do you have in the year and a half that you've been here, a favorite event that you've attended so far, or many favorite events?
I have several favorite events. And I feel like if you ask people that, they're all going to tell you about homecoming, right?
Of course.
Okay, so homecoming was fantastic,
Was.
and I tell everyone, especially when I meet new members, you must come back and come to that. And I actually stayed overnight again because I didn't know how late it would go.
I remember
And
this.
So and so I was like, I need to be sure that I'm staying overnight. And I was so happy that I did that. And I also met other members who were non-resident members.
Oh, okay.
Right, so
Yeah.
people who are coming from Michigan, from Iowa, Indiana, different places who are members here, and they come and stay, and they are staying overnight. So you usually see them for breakfast and the next morning and the
Big old
brunch.
nice weekend.
Yeah, it really makes that happen, and so that's been lovely. So yes, but I don't want to only talk about homecoming since I figure everybody's going to tell you about that. The other events like that I have actually enjoyed have been most of the buffets that we do. I think those have been really nice. And now I know enough people that I can just ask someone and sort of scooch in on their table. Or,
That's where the
and or-
networking comes in,
It
especially
has
here at the
been,
club.
which is again why it took me so long
Networking, socializing, all of it right here.
which is why it took me so long to get down here
Yes, you were
because
upstairs.
Yeah,
Just
we were
talking.
waiting. We were like, we sent out an APB. And
Anybody
we sent
seen-
a
and
couple
I got that
memos and-
APB
yeah.
on the elevator.
Yeah.
The guy that was in the elevator that meant
I
that
think was it Jared? Jared, did you run
it
into
Jared?
My supervisor,
Yeah.
Jared White.
I
he
did
told
not
me
know
that we
he
were
was your
looking.
supervisor, but yes, he did say. And I said, and I was on my way upstairs. I said, well, I've got to put on some lipstick or something because you all didn't tell me this was video at first so that I could say no.
Well,
But-
we are so glad that you finally made it here. It's been a great conversation.
I'm telling you, it
been.
really has been a great conversation. And before we go, for those who maybe decided, give me one thing that you want to leave with us. And I know we're about to hit the Easter weekend. Something that you may want to share, that you may want to talk about before we actually end the program.
I guess not knowing who might all be listening, I guess I would just say since the holiday weekend is coming up, I would just wish everyone a good holiday, lovely time with family and friends. You don't know when, you just don't know how things are going to progress. So
Yeah.
just enjoy the people you are with whenever you're with them. And then with respect to the club, I would say every time I try something new here, I've enjoyed it. I know there's some things that I probably wouldn't do again, but I'm glad I did it the first time. And that's what I would say about nearly anything. Try it once.
Try it once. You heard it.
Yeah, give things an opportunity, right? And then you don't have to do it again if it's not for
I
you.
like that. All right.